question for you. Right now we're going through this period of the COVID virus, which is affecting everything. How is that affecting the probate timetable and how people settle their estates and so on?
So the first thing it's done is, thankfully from my perspective, it's caused more people to want to do some planning, because we all have this idea now that today could be our last day on earth, so maybe we should get our affairs in order. But more importantly, we were talking in the prior segment about probate, which is the process by where a last will and testament is submitted to the surrogates court for approval. And you can't sell an inherited property unless you go through probate or administration in the surrogates court. So how has coronavirus affected this? Like many businesses, the courts are either closed or on dramatically reduced timetables and schedules. So what used to maybe take 2 or 3 months in Nassau County surrogates or Suffolk County is now taking 6 to 9 months. So,
what I don't understand about that is, I know we deal with a lot of permit issues, which is not probate, but it's dealing with the towns and the towns for the most part. And things that would take 3 days are now taking 3 months. Why are things taking 30 times longer? It doesn't make sense. And that's the part I'm saying. You may have a staff reduced by 10%, so things take 30 times longer, but you're experiencing the same thing in the probate case.
I wish I could explain it. Everyone's nervous. Everybody's scared. People are working from home. And leading into the coronavirus, at least in the surrogates court, which from my perspective is a fairly archaic court, they didn't have the mechanisms set up for people to work from home.
Right.
Unlike most businesses, remote working is not part of how the government takes care of its business. So if people are told to stay home, they're at home.
Right. We didn't have the ability to work remote. We didn't think we had the ability to work remotely. As a matter of fact, my son lived in Boston. He said, if you want to work with me, which I wanted him to come down and work with me, you have to move to New York. He moved to New York. 2 years later, Corona hit, and none of us are going to the office. So it turned out he never had to leave Boston at all. But apparently the government hasn't learned that lesson.
They haven't. And in the government's defense, they probably have more procedures that they have to follow.
Yes.
There's more of an infrastructure issue. They can't just spend money without approvals like we can.
Yes.
And additionally, you have to remember that when I go to the surrogates court and submit original documents, they're held in safekeeping at the court. So those aren't necessarily things that I want a court clerk taking home either by car or by subway and risking either damaging or losing those documents.
Correct.
So it's an obstacle, and I think the courts are putting a lot of effort into resolving those problems. But the key planning takeaway is you should not have any expectation of getting court approval quickly until we're long through this virus.
Right. So you're saying that in normal times, how long do you say it normally takes to go through probate?
If your application is complete and you're not going to have any family disputes or difficulties obtaining jurisdiction, most New York courts, 2 to 3 months. I think that's fair.
Is that consistent, Teen? I know the courts are county-based. You have the 5 counties of New York City as well as the 2 on Long Island. Are there better ones, or I'll say less better?
I would never say one court is better than the other because I have to practice in all those courts.
Faster? We use the word faster.
I've spent a great deal of my career in the Nassau County Surrogates Court.
Right.
They've always been very efficient. Suffolk County Surrogates Court is very efficient.
Right.
Even Kings and Queens counties are pretty efficient, but it also has to do with volume.
Right.
There's only so many man hours in a day, and they can only do so much, and they just don't have the employees to handle the volume of work that they're trying to handle.
Right. And with Corona, in all fairness to the Surrogates Court in particular, there were more deaths due to Corona. So with the death rate higher, there's not more staff in the courts, but there are more claims to process.
There's probably fewer staff and more claims to process. And remember, these are people working in government buildings, in a bullpen type environment. They don't have they had to be able to secure the office space, and a lot of them are in taller buildings. So now you have an issue of employees getting into the building. There were a lot of obstacles the courts had to remedy in order to be back up and running.